Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're going to talk about something you literally use every single day, your money. And we're asking a really vital question. How on earth do we actually preserve the American dream for the next generation? We're diving into how recent, groundbreaking legislative proposals are trying to completely redefine what it means to protect your stored energy and save for the future. Let's get right into it.
You know, preserving the American dream across generations, it's a deeply human, visceral desire. It's that simple hope that the hard work you put in today is actually going to be there for you and for your kids tomorrow. But let's be real, for years now, a lot of folks have felt like this dream is just slipping out of reach. It's been replaced by this constant, exhausting feeling of running on a hamster wheel just to stay in the exact same place.
So, to figure out why this is happening, our sources suggest we really need to rethink what money actually is. Because it's not just paper, right, or digits on a screen. Money is stored work. It is literally the hours of your life, your sweat, your ingenuity, turned into something you can hold on to and save for the future. The whole underlying contract of money is incredibly simple. You put your hours in today, and those hours should still be there waiting for you when you need them in 10 or 20 years. That's the entire deal, a safe place to keep what you've earned.
But, as our sources highlight, there's a pretty massive flaw in that contract today. Continuous money printing acts as this silent confiscation of your time. Think about it. Inflation is simply reaching into everybody's stored work and skimming a little bit off the top. And they do it quietly, and they do it constantly. This right here is the hamster wheel, forcing everyday people to become speculative investors just to protect the purchasing power of the hours they've already worked.
Section 1, Nature's Money and Math. Let's look at a mathematical escape. Our sources point out a really stark contrast here. On one side, you have fiat money. This is controlled by committees in a room you aren't in, which naturally makes it prone to inflation. But on the other side, you have Bitcoin, which has a strictly fixed supply of 21 million. Interestingly, physicists who analyze the network note that it grows according to natural power laws. These are the exact same resilient mathematical patterns that govern how cities grow or how forests expand. There's no central headquarters, there's no CEO, and absolutely no off switch.
The core argument we're looking at is that this network isn't run by good people instead of bad people. It's run by no people. It's run entirely by math. And the thing about math, it doesn't get greedy, and it definitely doesn't call an emergency weekend meeting for a bailout. According to our sources, this creates an incorruptible escape hatch, marking a profound shift in how property can actually be preserved over the long term without any outside interference.
Moving to Section 2, the ARMA bill. Let's break down this legislative solution.
Which brings us to an actual concrete legislative solution that's currently being proposed on a national scale. It's called the American Reserve Modernization Act, or ARMA for short, and it was introduced as a totally bipartisan effort by Republican Representative Nick Begich and Democratic Representative Jared Golden. What this bill attempts to do is take U.S. crypto policy away from easily reversible executive orders, things that can just be canceled by the next president, and lock it into permanent federal law. Now, the core mechanics of ARMA are actually highly specific. It formally codifies a strategic Bitcoin reserve, and it authorizes the Treasury to target the acquisition of 1 million Bitcoin over 5 years. To put that into perspective, that's about 5% of the total global supply. But here's the kicker, it doesn't just buy them, it locks them up. The bill mandates a strict 20-year lockup period for these assets. It also permanently ends the hasty practice of the government just auctioning off seized digital assets, and requires strict third-party proof of reserve audits. Basically, making sure everything is securely tracked and totally accounted for.
That takes us to Section 3, a debt reduction shield. Let's see how this goes to work for you.
328,000. That is the estimated number of Bitcoin the U.S. government already holds, mostly from law enforcement seizures over the years. Now, for the longest time, the official policy was to just auction these off to the highest bidder. ARMA ends that practice entirely. The architects of this bill aim to take these assets, seized from criminals, and keep them right on the national balance sheet to actually work for the public.
And the sources show they want to put those assets to work against a truly staggering number, our $39 trillion national debt. Because ARMA dictates a strict 20-year lockup on these digital assets, the absolute only exception allowed for selling them down the line is for the sole purpose of paying down this massive national burden. So it essentially acts as a long-term financial shield.
But you might be wondering, how did they actually fund the purchase of even more Bitcoin without raising taxes on citizens? Well, the bill utilizes a highly unique accounting mechanism. Surprisingly enough, the Federal Reserve has been holding gold certificates on its books at a statutory price set all the way back in the 1970s. We're talking just $42.22 an ounce. It's almost absurd to think about gold at that price today, right? So, by simply revaluing that gold to current market prices, the bill unlocks an estimated $747.3 billion in paper gains. Those latent funds are exactly what ARMA authorizes to purchase Bitcoin, meaning no new taxes and no new deficit spending. Pretty clever.
Now, this strategy really sits within a much wider global context. Our sources point out that the race for sovereign digital leverage has definitively begun. While the U.S. currently leads with 328,000, China holds an estimated 190,000, and the U.K. holds about 61,000. El Salvador, as you might know, already operates an active state portfolio. If ARMA actually passes, the U.S. would become the very first major sovereign nation to formally enshrine this as a strategic reserve asset. That would fundamentally shift the entire global financial chessboard.
All right, Section 4, protecting your property rights. Let's talk about your digital property. So ARMA doesn't just build a massive government reserve, it fundamentally focuses on the individual too. The bill explicitly affirms your right to own, transfer, and self-custody digital assets, officially enshrining private digital property rights right into federal statute. Our sources highlight the crucial logic here. This ensures that if you choose to save your stored energy in this way, your financial fate isn't being decided in a room you're not in. It legally protects that escape hatch we talked about, keeping the American dream well within reach for the next generation.
For everyday people, quantitative models from our sources illustrate exactly how this looks in practice. A fan chart model is often used to show how recurring accumulation, what we call dollar cost averaging, works mathematically over time. Now, while the sources absolutely acknowledge short-term volatility and market fear, they argue that continually converting traditional income into an asset with a fixed supply builds incredible long-term value. From their perspective, the volatility is really just short-term weather, while that power law adoption curve we mentioned, that is the actual climate.
And finally, Section 5, the new American dream. Let's talk about escaping the wheel.
The hamster wheel of inflation has been running for a really long time, quietly skimming away from our stored work. But with new decentralized assets and bipartisan legislation like ARMA aiming to legally protect them, the sources outline an entirely new path forward. So we want to leave you with this thought. When it comes to the literal hours of your life you've already worked, will you trust your stored energy to short-term political cycles? Or will you look toward a mathematically fixed escape hatch? Ultimately, the choice of how you secure your own American dream is entirely yours. Thanks so much for joining us for this explainer.